Hello everyone, today I'll be showcasing a bit of a unique build I'm currently in the process of completing. The chassis you see here is what I'm using as a base. It's a custom 3D printed chassis I designed around 2 years ago. This was actually the first 1/10 scale on-road chassis I ever designed, which makes this kind of a notable chassis for me personally, but naturally it does have a few shortcomings in the design. It's a shaft-driven, all-wheel drive touring chassis with a unique modular design. Despite some of its shortcomings, there are a few things about this chassis I really like. One of those things being the ruggedness of this chassis. This thing can take some serious abuse, and both differentials and motor gears are fully enclosed, protecting them from dust and dirt. It's the ruggedness of this design that inspired me to build the variation that you see here. The idea being to build a car that handles well both on and off-road, basically like a rallycross type of vehicle. I built a decent number of these chassis after I first designed it, and because of how cheap these were for me to print, anytime one sustained any significant damage, I just strip out all the electronics, wheels, and shocks from the chassis and install them onto a freshly printed one, and I'd use that opportunity to make some design improvements. After doing this for a while, I ended up with a box full of parts, and from those parts, I built the chassis you see here. This chassis is identical to the typical on-road version I would build, except for beefier shocks, a higher ride height, a locked rear differential, and all-terrain tires. I may have to redesign and reinforce some of the components on this chassis, so it's better suited for the type of driving I'm planning on doing. The body I'm using for this build is a Colt 2007 Subaru Impreza WRC for 190mm width touring chassis. I'm generally not a huge fan of Colt bodies, but I like the look of this Impreza, and the price is very reasonable. I got this one from RC Mart for $14 US. The quality overall seems decent, but definitely not up to the level of other 10th scale bodies on the market. However, considering this car is going to get bashed around, I'd rather not spend more than I have to on a body that will inevitably get beaten up. As you can see, I've cut some openings on the front of the body. I'll be installing my own grille using contour wire mesh rather than the included stickers, and I'm going to make the air vents functional. Colt does include a rear spoiler and side view mirrors for this body, but I'll be making my own mirrors, and I'm not sure if I'll be putting any spoiler on this car. But if I do, it definitely won't be the one that's included since I don't really like how it looks. The chassis I'm using is a bit narrow for this body, however, if I end up designing some new suspension components, this will give me the opportunity to widen the track width. Since I'm making a custom grille from pieces of cut contour mesh, I wanted to trace the openings onto paper so I have a rough idea of what size and shape pieces I need to cut. I removed the protective overspray layer of the body earlier, so I have to apply masking to the outside of the body to protect it from any overspray during painting. Over the areas where the magnets for the body posts will be placed, I'm using 3 generous coats of liquid mask. Once the liquid mask dries, I adjust the height and then the position of the body mounts. I shouldn't have taped around the wheel arches before doing this, since it makes it harder to line up the body in relation to the wheels, but it's not a big deal. I'm at least close to having the body positioned how I want it, and any minor adjustments are easy enough to make after the body is painted. After the body is at the correct height and position, or at least close to it, I place a magnet on top of the body, sandwiching the body between the 2 magnets, and mark its position. Now that the outside of the body is masked, and the position of the magnets for the magnetic body posts are marked, it's time to mask the inside of the body. I'm going for a very basic single color paint job on this body. I'm first going to mask off everything except sections I want painted black, and then I will paint the rest of the body gunmetal, and then follow that with a white backing. I'm not going to do anything special with the masking or painting on this body. Again, this thing is going to take some abuse, so I don't want to spend hours doing a bunch of detail work on this body. I'd rather spend that time on a body like the 180SX I'm using for the budget drift build, which will not be subjected to any harsh driving. I'm using the included window masking stickers to mask off all of the windows except on the rear. The rear window mask provided seemed a little too big, so to play it safe, I'm doing the masking myself. After masking off everything except the parts I want painted black, I'm ready to start applying paint. I'm using Duratrax paint sprayed from a rattle can to paint this body. I applied a total of 3 coats of basic black to the hood vents and front air dam. I got some overspray on the bumper, so I used a little bit of rubbing alcohol to remove this paint, and I applied masking for the headlights. Next, I applied 4 light coats of gunmetal and then followed that with 2 backing coats. The included masking stickers didn't seem to block the paint and produce a nice clean line like others I've used, and they left quite a bit of residue behind, but they got the job done. With the masking off, I wanted to test fit the headlights. For chrome, I usually use paint made specifically for polycarbonate, but I was all out, so I decided to use a can of Krylon chrome instead, just to see how well it would work. I'm pretty satisfied with the outcome. At first I sprayed from the back, like what is typical for painting RC bodies, but this left a matte finish when viewed from the opposite side, so I painted from the front and the result looks pretty good. I'm curious to see how well the paint holds up, but I'm optimistic since there shouldn't be much flexing and they're protected from rock chips and scratches, so I think there's a good chance they'll hold up. If they do, I'll probably be using this paint in the future for lights since it's cheaper than the kinds made specifically for polycarbonate. To help keep this build simple, I'm using the included window stickers. Here I'm taping the magnets to the top of the body in the position I marked earlier. After placing the body on top of the magnetic body posts, I realized that I needed to readjust the position of the magnets. Once I did that, I marked their new position and I reapplied the tape and removed the body. With the positioning magnets on the outside of the body taped securely in place, I glue the magnets for the body mounts to the inside of the body. I used shoe glue as an adhesive, which I'm not sure was a good idea, as I'll explain in a moment. With all the magnets glued in place, the body can now be placed on the chassis. Once the glue is fully dried, I remove the tape and the positioning magnets, and then any remaining masking. The body is positioned nicely and is looking great except for the paint around the magnets. In the past I've used hot glue, super glue, and shoe glue as an adhesive for magnets and never had a problem with any of them until now. At first I thought it might be due to moving the magnets after the glue started to set, even though shoe glue takes some time before it starts to harden, and I made it a point to move the magnets as little as possible. Although this may have contributed, upon closer inspection, I noticed all the paint that the shoe glue touched, not just directly under and around the magnet, seems to have reacted with the glue. I've never had this happen before, but I think I might shy away from using shoe glue for magnetic mounts in the future. To confirm this, I think I might place a little bit of glue on the rear bumper, behind where the license plate will go, and see if I can duplicate the reaction. The paint did have over 48 hours of dry time before I used the glue, so it should have been dry enough. I was a little sloppy with it and used a little more than what I normally would, but I'm not quite sure what the issue is. If any of you have had this happen, or have any ideas of why this happened, please let me know in the comments. Aside from that, I'm really happy with how the body turned out. This gunmetal paint looks awesome, and despite the track width being a little bit narrow, and the wheelbase a tiny bit too long, I think the positioning of the body looks pretty good. I'm going to be adding some more detail to the body and doing a bit of sanding around the edges, cleaning up some of the paint that bled through the masking, and installing a light kit in a future video, as well as taking this thing out, seeing how it drives, and what changes need to be made to the suspension. So be sure you are subscribed so you don't miss any upcoming videos, and for more frequent updates you can follow me at the social media links below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you give this video a like and leave a comment below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.